Start with a joke, but I'm going to start by pissing you off. This room is full. It is beyond full. It is packed to full because we're talking about some very bad, very stupid laws that Congress tried to pass and failed, luckily, and some very stupid things they're trying to do in secret and will hopefully also fail. But we're all here to talk about the bad things that we don't have any control over, and the room is full. We had a DMCA triennial review panel where you actually have some control. You actually have some input. And I had about 15 people, and we didn't even talk about the triennial review. We mostly talked about safe harbor. Remember that you have control on this process. Okay? You're the ones who have input. If the government's going to take your input, give it, because that's how we're going to change the copyright law. That's how we're going to change the things they're trying to put in. Anything you don't like, you've got to be involved in the process. Don't just come for old stuff that pisses you off. Be involved on the front end and try to make the laws that you want to have. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Now, if all you're mad at me, my name's Blair Chintilla.
I'm Blair Chintilla.
And we tell the nice people who we are, like for real.
That's a good idea. I'm TJ Myhill. I'm an attorney here in Atlanta, and I litigate primarily copyright and trademark infringements, help people protect their rights, and generally handle the law side of things.
I'm Blair Chintilla. I'm also an attorney here, formerly Atlanta, now in Douglas, Georgia. Anyone here know where that is? 2, 3 people. Wow, okay. Then you know where I'm coming from. Feel me. Yeah.
I'm Bruce Schneier. I am not an attorney. I do computer security technology.
My name is Jeff Termeshazen. I've got a degree in political science. I'm busy working on a master's in cybersecurity, and I spent like the last 12 years doing surveillance for a company, and the past 8 months or so doing financial transactions.
All right, well, that's it. Why is everybody looking at me?
You started here, I guess.
You had the soapbox.
I said my piece. I'm done. Well, all right. I guess we're here to talk about all the bad stuff Congress has put in place, or tried to. So there are all kinds of alphabet soup initial letters out there that all amount to, basically, in a nutshell, Congress trying to increase scope of copyright protection, increase copyright punishments, and most importantly, get extrajurisdictional control over copyrights outside the U.S. because we don't like things like Pirate Bay. So they try to stop Pirate Bay, but in so doing, ignore all the realities of the process and set out to create laws that are absolutely terrible for lots of other people. So in the long run, it's a quick response to a problem that lobbyists have raised, and it's not a well thought out response, and it's not a well thought out law in any respect. But that's where we come from. So that's what we're here to talk about. And
I have a name to get you started: Lamar Smith. For those of you who don't know, he is a congressman from Texas, and he is one of the primary people who are pushing these things. There are others, but they're not quite as bad as he is. He's the one pushing SIPA, SOPA, CISPA. He's also, I read that as of July 10th, he submitted a new one called EPA, IPAA, Intellectual Property Attaché Act, which is basically ramping up the number of attaché officers in foreign embassies to basically push things like ACTA and SOPA and stuff to foreign governments and make it an extremely high priority that essentially anytime they enter negotiations, this is one of the things they talk about.
Yeah, one thing that's common, I guess, across all these acts that they keep trying to push for is to try to deputize ISPs. And so the ISPs are, the government or the people pushing for it want the ISPs to kind of do their job for them. And monitor and throttle your bandwidth and send you threatening letters and harass you and stuff like that. So, and the acts are written so broadly that it can cover pretty much any sort of crime or any intellectual property theft, or real crimes, more physical crimes, stuff like that. So, luckily they all failed so far. So.
The real problem with that kind of overreach is that then you start putting in liability on ISPs that the DMCA took away and allowed the ISPs to allow user content and have user-generated input, and really everything that we enjoy about the web today goes away if ISPs can be liable for what people are doing on their sites. So it shuts down far more than just the blatant acts of piracy that Congress is trying to go after.
So I guess let me start by saying a couple things. I would take my sort of position as designated holist to actually try to answer the question on the panel title. This is, what is Congress smoking? Because it's actually an interesting question. What are the dynamics that are in play here? And really what we're looking at is regulatory solutions to the Internet. I mean, the governments have discovered the Internet. It took them a while, but they've discovered it. And this is important because heretofore we've managed to fly under the radar. And when governments discover the Internet, they discover that a lot of things are happening on the Internet that they, traditionally don't like. Right? And it's crime. It's child porn. It's terrorist recruiting. It's copyright violations. I mean, these are for various degrees of bad. These are bad things. Right? There's so as the Internet starts mirroring our society, more of the things, both good and bad, that happen in society happen on the Internet. And Congress, governments in general, take a stand against bad things that happen places. Right? I mean, law enforcement, for decent reason, doesn't like all the bad stuff happening on the Internet, and they're looking for ways to stop it. Right? This is a perfectly rational, actually an extremely palatable political argument. Right? There are child pornographers out there. It's really hard to say, but wait, when presented with that kind of argument. So there's really an honest desire to make the net safer, to make the net more legal. When a congressman is told by someone in the music industry, if you pass this law, you will protect a very important industry in your country, they're likely to want to do it. Right? So we're seeing a problem is that a lot of these laws they're either ineffectual or they have major side effects that are sort of being whitewashed. I mean, God, about a decade ago, I remember talking about the four horsemen of the information apocalypse, right? And it's terrorism, kidnapping, money laundering, and child pornography. You start mentioning those four things, and you're going to get your laws passed, right? Because nobody will stand up in Congress in favor of kidnapping, right? Which it sounds like you are, if you go against some of these laws, right? So you're having these very natural tendencies within the government. And on top of that, you're having companies, for-profit entities, manipulating these. And it could be as simple as, I sell full body scanners, so I'm going to convince the TSA to buy some. Or, I'm Disney, and I'm going to convince Congress to write a law to favor me. I'm not going to spin it as, please write the pro-Disney law, but that'll be the side effect. Right? And what we're dealing with is the collateral damage. And so these few alphabet soup laws happen about copyright, but there's some really interesting examples of this we're seeing that are more general. Wholesale surveillance. Right? So laws have been passed to allow the NSA and AT&T to eavesdrop on everybody. And it's not just phone calls. We know that governments are collecting financial data. Lots of transaction data. Right? So these new laws are being passed, and the bugaboo here is terrorism. Right? That's one of the horsemen that's on ascendance. And they're passed with very little debate. Eavesdropping facilitation. I don't remember Kalia. In the mid-'90s, the FBI went to Congress and said, we're unable to eavesdrop. When you used to eavesdrop on phone calls, when phone calls were analog, there was a switch in a phone company switching station. You'd go there with your needle-nose alligator clips, and you'd go there with your tape recorder, and you'd eavesdrop on a phone call. Right? Someone invents packet switch networks, and suddenly you can't do that anymore. That pissed the FBI off. They went to the government and said, please pass a law forcing phone companies to make their networks eavesdroppable. Phone companies said, that's going to be expensive. Right? The FBI said, well, okay, well, we'll get Congress to pay for it. That passed, and now phone networks are much more eavesdroppable. Recently, they've gone back and said, the internet, and that's code for Skype. Right? The bad guys are using Skype, and we want a law to make all internet communication systems eavesdroppable. And this ranges from easy to impossible. Right? On the easy end is like Gmail. I mean, your mail is unencrypted, on the Gmail server or the Google servers, and the FBI can get to them. On the other end is Skype, which is end-to-end encrypted from your computer to your person you're talking to's computer. And there's no actual way to make it eavesdroppable unless you rip down the system and build in something in place. Right? In the middle is going to be the chat in World of Warcraft, which will fall under these laws. Right? And it's not just the U.S. You saw this debate in Saudi Arabia and I'm blanking on the other country with RIM, with BlackBerries. India, right? They were annoyed they couldn't eavesdrop on BlackBerries. And they said, hey, RIM, you have to fix this. And RIM said, we can't. And then the country said, well, we're going to kick you out. And then they came up with some kind of arrangement, which is code for there is a RIM server inside the countries that they could get at through any conventional law enforcement means. Right, we're seeing this with data retention laws. Someone mentioned that often the ISPs bear the brunt of this. Many countries are passing data retention laws, forcing ISPs to collect your data and save it for a period of 6 months, a year, 2 years, depends on the country. Right, so the government can eavesdrop on you backwards in time. I think one of the worst examples of this was last year when someone came up with a bill for the internet kill switch.
Lieberman, was it?
We see a bunch of incarnations of this. I like to think of it as a big red button on Obama's desk. Right? Stop the internet. Now, as a computer security guy, this is crazy. Because once you build in this capability, you have to now make sure only the good guys can push the big red button.
Right, exactly.
Right? You're much more secure if there exists no button. But again, can we shut off all or part of the internet if the bad guys, right? And the Mumbai terrorist attacks are often brought up to justify that. Calls to eliminate anonymity are part of this. You'll see, the anonymous internet is bad. So we right, we're seeing a lot of these, and they're all skirmishes, right? This SOPA and PIPA is really the most recent salvo of the war against general purpose computing, which some of us have been talking about for really about 10 years. That the notion of you having a general purpose computer is fundamentally scary to the power structures, and ways to control that, limit that. And it's government and corporations working together, which is really why this scares me. There's not a big constituency. We got lucky in SOPA and PIPA because Google happened to fall on the side of don't like it.
I think Facebook did too, didn't it?
Right, yeah, it's right. It was Facebook also.
Yeah.
Wikipedia
Wikipedia doesn't count. Wikipedia is in the noise. Google has actual money. Right? They have more money than God. And them falling on the side of don't like the law. Right? Suddenly you had lobbyists on either side. Rarely do we have lobbyists on either side. We've got lobbyists on one side and EFF on the other side. Which isn't isn't a fair fight, unfortunately. So, when you think about solutions, I agree with name I forget. Sorry. that we have to organize. That we have to make our voices heard. It is actually rare that politicians vote against a vocal constituency. Mm-hmm. They'd rather do nothing. And, I think SOPA PIPA terrified congressmen. I mean, Schumer, there are 3,000 people outside my office, and none of them were bussed in. What the hell's going on? Right? None of them were bussed in. Right? They all came in themselves. Right? This wasn't someone organizing people to protest. That's a big deal. And he's going to think twice before he does this again. Mm-hmm. And that's the way you change stuff. There's really serious amalgamation of corporate and government interests trying to reduce internet freedom because both of those groups don't like it. And it's not just the bad governments of China. It's the government of the U.S. So that's.
And here's the thing. I mean, we talk about government and corporations acting together, and frankly, the RIAA doesn't like you. Neither does the movie industry. Neither does anybody. until you're
Nobody
going
likes
and
you, we're
buying
sorry.
their product and putting your money in their pockets. The movie industry loves you when you go buy a movie ticket, but they don't think of people with computers as buying movie tickets. They think of people with computers as downloading movies for free. Just like the RIAA thinks as far as music sales. Just like generally corporations don't want the ability that you're dealing with. So that's why they're in favor of these alphabet soup acts and this limitation on the internet. The corporations are not necessarily on your side. Google happened to be on our side here. That's because it was going to be a problem for Google, not because Google likes you any more than the RIAA. So at the end of the day, you've got to step up. Okay, congressmen like money. That may come as a surprise to everyone. But they're going to listen to the lobbyist who's buying them a nice dinner and telling them how terrible this is for the industry and how much it's going to take out of the job market and the economy in their jurisdiction. So congressmen are going to say, oh, that's very, very bad. I should probably support this and listen to this lobbyist. But congressmen also like to get reelected. And when people show up and say, hey, I don't like this bill you're about to vote for, and I'm going to make sure you don't get reelected, they listen to that too.
And that was a surprise. Everyone thought SOPA PIPA was uncontroversial. It was believed in Congress that this was easy. I mean, we just do it and it's done and make some people happy and nobody gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Congress tends to like this. They like consensus. So, when there's actual opposition that's real, it's a different sort of process. It changes what happens.
And it was also bipartisan.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was bipartisan. I mean, because no reason. There was no sides. This was easy.
Everybody hates child porn and internet piracy. It's a bad thing. Turns out, everybody doesn't.
And the problems was really the collateral damage. I mean, the problems with these bills are what else it does. You're seeing people who aren't internet engineers trying to engineer outcomes on the internet. Right? And they do that by fiddling with architecture, and that has other effects. Right? And we all know this. I mean, those of us who do engineering, but that's actually a subtle argument to make to someone who's not an engineer.
And taking it back to my side of the fence, it's the same thing we see. We're here to talk about a lot of these acts that did deal with the Copyright. Problem with Copyright Act is it was written in 1976, and now we're trying to shoehorn what we thought we knew in 1976 into 2012 technology. And frankly, it didn't work for everything in 1976. It sure as hell doesn't work now. But we keep trying to fix things and tweak things and cover some gaps rather than rewrite the entire act, which I think is a good idea. But at the end of the day, it leaves Congress always trying to catch up. They're always trying to catch up with the technology that they're really not the first to hear about. So it really creates these problems and these gaps where the law doesn't fit and someone tries to shoehorn a solution in that isn't well thought out because it's not put in by anyone who understands either the technology or the copyright aspects.
So let's do questions, I think.
Yeah.
Tell me where to go.
That way.
Pick one.
Okay, that
Start
guy.
right here then, 'cause it saves me walking. Actually, come this side of the speaker so we don't get feedback.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
My question is a little more complicated than what I'm going to ask, but my question is basically, how do we go about doing something about it? And the backdrop to that is what you said, that there's this meeting where there's like, hey, there's a chance to do something about it. Nobody shows up. 15 people show up, right? Well, maybe you had a different public education than I had, but we were not taught how to contact our congressmen, how to write them, who to go to, who the interest groups are, how to find those interest groups, where to donate money if we're supposed to do that. Thank you. The one we can access or the one we cannot access? I don't know. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be redacted. So how do we go about participating in a way that we know will be effective, as opposed to some people listen saying, hell no, we all got, because we don't want to do that shit. So what's the effective way of proceeding? Thank you.
He's looking at me again. Well, let me help you with your public education. I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. Anyway, that's it. I mean, the facts are you've got to pay attention. It's hard to do because they don't make it easy. You know, not every bill gets into the newspaper. Right. Not everything Congress is doing happens in public awareness. Unfortunately, it is something that you need to pay attention to. If you're interested in it, pay attention. It is all on the internet. Yep. And you go to the internet, you can look up what bills are being passed by the House and the Congress, both federally and in your state. Pay attention to those. See who's proposing those bills. See who's supporting those bills. Then their contact information is online. Call their chambers and say, hey, knock it off. Because that's a lot more effective than... I mean, petitions are good. People pay attention to some petitions. People pay attention to guys with signs out front, but they pay a lot more attention to somebody in their jurisdiction picking up the phone and saying, knock it off.
So, a lot of good...
The question is actually bigger than this. I mean, for any issue that involves our country, the question is how do we engage? You know, so we're living in a world where it seems all very remote and distant. There's nothing we can do. And it's actually surprising to most people, but contacting legislatures actually has an effect. In general, the harder the contact, the more the effect is. Right, signing a petition's down here, emailing is here, calling is here, writing an actual letter, finding an envelope, putting a stamp on it, dropping it in a mailbox is up here. And it really is. I'm actually not making this up. Faxes are somewhere in the middle. Right? The more work you spend, the more seriously your view is taken. They tally up these letters. They tally up what the opinions are, and they take them seriously. Now, the second part of the question is, how do I know when to write and what to say? Well, I hope you know how to write a letter. I mean, you know, and the way you find out when is you organize. Right? All of the groups in this country that are getting their views heard is because they got a phone tree or an email tree, or they go look someplace and they're told, boo, go write to this guy. And, you know, whether it's a corporate CEO or a congressman suddenly gets a big-ass pile of letters on his desk, and then what happened? Right? And so, there are lists, there are organizations, depending on what your cause is, whether it's not this cause. I mean, it could be healthcare, it could be anything. Right? There are groups that will help mobilize you, that want to mobilize you desperately. Mm-hmm. And the more people they get, right? It's a game of percentages. You got a 100,000 person list, and 1/10 of you are going to do something. Right? So find your causes, find the organizations, get on the lists.
For this particular issue, the EFF is a good resource, really good.
Yeah.
They have feeds that will keep you abreast on like all the issues, depending on what you're interested in. They have petitions that they'll fill out for you, and they'll have all the contact information. They'll send it for you. You just have to sign off on it.
Right, but remember, those are less effective than rewriting it.
Right.
That's right. Print it out,
Electronic Frontier Foundation.
The Electronic Privacy Information Center is another really good one. But there are a lot out there, and if you go to one side, they'll have links to others. And there's a lot of
and to add what he said about the power of those things, I know in Georgia at least, if you get a petition, they'll accept it, but it counts as one voice. So if you get 10,000 people all sign this petition, that counted as one complaint. If you get 10,000 people writing in, that will count it as 10,000 complaints.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is handwritten counts more than typed. I mean,
if you show up at their door, that's more.
Unless you have handwriting like mine.
And of course, there's also the website govtrack.us, which will let you track bills as they're introduced, go through committees, voted on by representative, by topic, by committee, or any kind of interest that you want, so you can set a thing and it'll email you every day.
But I maintain that's too hard. I mean, no one's gonna. You ever try to read one of these bills? I mean, they're completely opaque, and they're designed that way. I mean, you have to find a proxy. You have to find someone who's going to pay attention, who an acts organization, whatever the topic is you want, and then you listen to them. It's the only way to survive.
And to find out who to write to, you can actually just Google who is my representative. And it'll link you both to Senate and to House resources where you type in like your name, address, everything else, and it actually tells you directly, here's the folk who represent you at state and at federal level, here's their contact information, addresses, phone numbers, websites. It's that simple to find out who's your who's representing you at what level.
Just remember, though, too, Bruce is absolutely right. You've got to go get a proxy, okay? Someone who can help you understand what's out there, keep track of what's there. Otherwise, it really is a full-time job to figure out how many bills are going up, okay? You can't do that. But remember that each one of those organizations has their own agenda, too. So it doesn't hurt to be a member of one or two or three so that you get maybe different sides or at least multiple perspectives on what's going on out there.
All right, send that microphone to the back somewhere.
Okay.
Just throw it.
Sorry.
Okay. Alrighty. You mentioned the 1976 Copyright Act and how they're trying to shoehorn the implications. What specifically were the implications of the 1976 Copyright Act specifically? Because, I mean, we've been dealing with copyright extension since, well, the founding of the Republic, really.
Right.
I guess I'm not 100%. What did the 1976 Act do? Everything. I mean, it was a total rewrite of the Copyright Act. But it was it's the Copyright Act we currently exist under. Although, you know, obviously there are nuances that get changed. The extensions happen as part of the outside the process. They don't rewrite the entire Copyright Act. They simply extend the term. They didn't rewrite the entire Copyright Act. They wrote the Digital Millennium Copyright Act to try to cover some gaps. They try to tweak it as it goes along. But the 1976 Act was a complete rewrite of what we had before.
Wow.
Hi, my name is Micah Schaffer. I worked at YouTube and Google on copyright compliance and policy stuff.
You get a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, I left in 2009, but I was thanks. But I was involved in some of the lobbying efforts against SOPA back in November. Went out to D.C., met with various senators, members of their staff, people in Congress, and one of the things that really struck me, especially coming from Google in the past and working on policy issues, and then coming kind of representing Silicon Valley, was how much this got framed. And I heard a little bit of it on the panel earlier. It's really kind of like Google versus Hollywood. And I think that's something that the entertainment industry really perpetuated a lot too. And it's kind of marginalizing. And it was fascinating to me coming from Silicon Valley, because when I talk to startups and entrepreneurs, there's sort of this perception that, I'm like a 5-person company. I've got a little bit of money, but my interests are aligned with Google. So if they can't handle this in the lobbying, really, what can I add? And I believe that for a long time too, because it makes sense, right? What I found that was crazy, and a lot of this is because I think Google's been demonized a lot in DC from Microsoft and the telecoms in Hollywood for a long time, is they really need us, and they need the grassroots, and they need all the little startups much more than we need their help with lobbying. That's what made SOPA fall in the end. It was Reddit. It was a coalition of small startups, entrepreneurs, people talking about the effects on jobs that really did it. So I just wanted to emphasize, don't wait for Google. That isn't what did it, and it really is about the grassroots.
Especially because next time Google might not be on our side.
Right.
Right. I mean, I think we just got real lucky there.
And of course, we are doing a panel on the actual internet blackout as well on Monday morning.
How about back there in the...
Which with the yellow hair?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi. I love your chainsaw.
Thank you. I'm wondering, I'm from Canada. I've been following all this a lot. But I've been following all of these laws closely because whatever tends to happen in the States ends up affecting a whole lot of other places too, including Canada. I expect any of your laws to come in, Canada law light next. Is there a way for people who aren't American to also make an impact in Congress to say something like, hey, your foreign policy is going to make a lot of people angry if you pass this as well? Is there something we can do if we're not American?
Bug your American friends.
It's a lot harder. Right. I mean, there are rules against political contributions. It's kind of bad optics for you to influence American elections. I think any noise made affects the generic zeitgeist on the internet, and that's good, because it's not just Canada. It's Europe. There's a lot of I think of it as jurisdictional arbitrage going on, and you'll see this in the U.S. Some group will try to get a law passed, and sometimes it's DOD or the FBI will try to get a law passed, fail. They'll go to some international body, get it as a standard or in a treaty, and then come back and say, well, we have to comply. It's international. We have to be normalized.
Like ACTA.
Right. Good example. So you'll see that kind of jurisdictional whitewashing, jurisdictional arbitrage going on. So I think it's important to watch, especially American lobbying efforts in other countries, because they'll often test stuff out there, either before it comes here or try to get it through the back door. So, any noise you make, because you're not obviously Canadian on the net, but direct lobbying, direct influence is much dicier.
Unless you type the word "a boot," and then you're totally Canadian on that. But the bug your American friends and the make the noise, that's great for you. It's great for you guys too. I mean, look around the room. We've got 100 people in here.
135, I think.
Okay, we have 135 people here. We have 50,000 people at DragonCon. Now, they can't all fit in here, but this is a very, very, very small percentage of even the people here who are interested in this. Okay? So the way that those people are going to hear about these acts is they're not going to go join these interest groups and get the emails that you guys do. You need to turn around and re-email. You need to put them on Facebook. You need to tweet it out there so people see it and become aware of it. Then they say, oh, I now know of this thing that's going to impact me, and maybe I should do something about it. You're the core people who are going to start getting the word out. Get the word out and bug people to do something.
That's how the campaign to black out the websites basically got around. So the internet.
And you can also bug your own politicians as well, because with things like the IPAA, where they're like boosting the number of IP attaches and embassies and whatnot, the embassies are the folk talking to your politicians. And if they keep raising something like, hey, we need to push ACTA, we need to push SOPA, and your politicians saying like, yeah, we can't do that, none of our folk like that, you're stopping them there. They can't get to that international level that Bruce was talking about, or they have a lot more resistance to getting it to that point, because you're talking to your politicians and almost preempting them at that level.
We got front people yet.
So you've been talking about some of these acts that are in the past and are currently not alive. But I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the upcoming WCIT 2012 that's in December. And for those of you who don't know about WCIT 2012, that's WCIT. It's an international treaty where a number of countries are trying to rewrite a 1987 treaty around telecommunications to basically take international governmental control of the Internet. This is being led largely by Vladimir Putin, a number of Middle Eastern countries, and elsewhere. And there's a meeting in December in Dubai.
Yeah. This is the ITU. This is the International Telecommunications Union. It's sort of under the UN, and it is the organization now that actually used to be called the International Telegraph Union, right? So it shows you how old it is, and it was designed to establish international standards for telegraph and then telephony. And the reason you can make international phone calls and have been for a century is because of that organization. There's a lot of money in international telephony. There's an enormous number of enormous amount of money that's transferred generally from rich countries to poor countries. And it has been a huge source of revenue, especially because in many countries it's like the president's brother owns the phone company. I mean, it can get funneled out of government into government leaders' pockets very easily. And these organizations, the ITU in particular, has been seeing a lot of their revenue go away and their control go away with the rise of the Internet. Again, think Skype. Right? So they want... And this sounds pretty good so far, right? I mean, it'd be nice to have more international bodies regulating the Internet instead of just the U.S. I mean, moving ICANN more internationally. There's different things you can do. Unfortunately, it really is a very repressive, slow organization. It's like one country, one vote. So you are going to see a lot of the smaller, the less developed countries in a more controlling position. And it's widely believed, and the things they want, if you look at it, is more control, more ability to regulate, more ability to stop traffic, to control traffic routing, which actually I'm kind of in favor of. If a country wants the traffic to ensure that it's not routed through the U.S., it's probably a good idea. Mm-hmm. Right, because right now I think 80% of the internet goes through the U.S., which is why there's a big data center in Utah the NSA is running. And so, but this is actually a really bad body to start doing internet standards because they are so bureaucratic and so governmentese and very anti the way the internet works. It's not the IETF, even by it's closed. To attend the meeting, you must be on a government delegation. You can't show up if you're not part of a government delegation. Now, some countries are good about that. I mean, Canada very regularly invites civil society members to its delegation to bring them to these meetings. I mean, other countries are much less good. Right? But the basic way that organization thinks is the government speaks for the people of that country, right? Which is okay when it works and bad when it doesn't. This is a worrisome thing, and a lot of people are worried about it and trying to fight it. It'll be very, very political. I mean, this is about as far away from technical as you can get and still be on the internet.
Someone here, take one.
Richard guy's been trying for one.
It's yellow shirt.
I'm going to be quick. I wanted to talk about your point. How do you get involved in advocacy? And an easy way to do that is go to congress.org. They'll teach you how to find your legislatures, what the issues are, how you can affect things, how to write a letter to the press. All of that stuff is really easy to find. Congress.org. It's bipartisan if that matters to you. And it's a great website. They have newsletters you can sign up for, so check them out.
Do you believe we'll see a reversal of this trend when my generation and future generations start to get into leadership? Because we're, like, say, a lot more tech savvy, a lot more open-minded, and so forth?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. I don't know.
I actually do. I think it will take a generation, but I think a lot of this will wash out. I mean, a lot of the more repressive policies. I think a lot of our terrorism policy will wash out. It's going to take a generation, who didn't feel the fear in the same way, who's thinking more clearly, who's born to the internet. I mean, someone who's been, downloading music off the net since they could talk is going to have a very different feel. And we see that. Business models do change. I mean, right? This business model of selling copies is relatively new. You think of television never had that model, right? You gave away the content, and you sold appearing next to the right to appear next to the content, or in the content. I mean, there's a lot of different business models that could work. I mean, the one that's in power is fighting for its life. And that will change, but it's not going to change quickly. Right? The people in power are not going to go down easy, but eventually someone's going to figure out how to make real money given the physical realities of the internet, and there'll be a new business model that'll be better. I mean, you're seeing some of that with Apple saying, "Okay, enough of this nonsense. 99 cents a song, shut up." Right? Yeah. And they had enough power to do it. Or Amazon saying, "Enough of this nonsense. $10 a book. Shut up." And then there was pushback, right? And so we're seeing these battles as the old media fights with the new media. And in general, in any business model, the entity that controls the narrowest piece of the supply chain wins. Right? They're the ones who make the money. Right? So at an airport, it's not McDonald's that's making the profits. It's the airport rent, right? Because that is the narrowest resource. Right? For books, it's the people right now who make the readers, because that's the choke point. There are a gazillion books. There are 3 readers, right? So that's where you're going to see the profits, and that's what Apple did with music. Right? They made iTunes the thing. So you had to, if you wanted to be on it, you had to play. And so, but this is all in flux. But yeah, give it a generation, and will be all different.
Now let me tell you why I said no.
Okay.
I agree with all that. I agree that as we start to find new business models, as we start to get new businesses in place, and we start to replace the RIAA and the MPAA, or at least transition them into something that adopts the digital model rather than fights the digital model, those things will start to change. That has nothing to do with the people in power. It has everything to do with the people who are lobbying. As your generation takes power in Congress, the people who take power in Congress are not going to be the people who understand technology any more than they are today.
Right.
Okay, nobody in technology today understands TV any more than they understand the internet. They don't understand the film camera any more than they understand TV. They're not the people who are involved in that. So as the businesses change, certainly the laws might change. But at no point, I think, in any of our lives or our children's lives or our grandchildren's lives are we going to have to stop babysitting our Congress people and forcing them to do the right thing.
Maybe not here, but at least in Europe, the Pirate Party's starting to get a foothold, at least in Germany. The Netherlands, in 2 weeks' time, they're looking at maybe 5 or 6 seats in the national parliament.
Wait till they get in power.
Yeah.
I thought the libertarians were good too.
Well,
And then
I've kind of got a vested interest because I was the head of the U.S. Pirate Party for a year, and then I ran Pirate Party International through the European elections in 2009. So I helped coordinate their campaign.
Well, the thing is, like in 5 or 10 years, even 15 years down the road, most of the folk in the positions of power there will no longer be tech people. They'll be professional politicians because they're that much more effective at what they do. I mean, you don't go ask a politician to fix your computer because they got no idea how to do it. And I think it's a very good thing that we've got folk in the industry who are stepping up and forming their own political parties. But once you hit a certain point, you start getting in the folk who do this for a living. And that's when it starts to change. And it doesn't have to, but it probably will.
Although I'm okay with this, right? I'm sorry.
For my first panel, thank you everyone for being patient.
First panel ever.
Ever, yeah. Okay. I guess I'm the idea that it's the knowledge of technology that's kind of holding Congress back from making intelligent decisions isn't necessarily. I don't believe that's the cause. I think it's more of a basic moral and ethical sort of character issue. Because obviously they didn't have the technical know-how, they couldn't do all the bad things they're doing. We want them to do the good things, so that reduces it to the ethical issue. So really, it's more of a generalized, I think, democratic issue, really. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Would you go over very slowly, please, all the various organizations or some of the various organizations that can delineate what the actual issues are?
This panel will now go till Thursday at 3.
Well, no.
Just a few of them.
There's really 3 that matter. There's EFF, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation. EFF.org. EFF.org.
It's on the EFF Track website as well.
Okay, the second one is the Electronic Privacy Information Center, which is epic.org. And the third organization that tracks these, although a little different spin, is the ACLU, and that's aclu.org. ACLU, yeah. ACLU has digital privacy group, and they do a lot of. I mean, you think of them as a state organization, they do a lot of work in Washington for some of these laws and how they affect First Amendment rights and privacy.
So I was reading the internet the other day and noticed that the Republican Party had announced their platform, and one of the planks in it is internet freedom. And I was wondering if you could comment on what that means to them as opposed to what it means to...
Freedom through regulation. Freedom through regulation.
I haven't the faintest clue.
Pretty much that they're free to do what they like. I mean, their intentions are good. As in, again, they want to stop the child porn, they want to stop the terrorists and whatnot. The problem isn't the intention, the problem is the implementation. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it's like the guy went to trial for breaking PS3. Part of the judge's ruling on that was you have to go get back every copy of the software that's been released. And eventually someone explained to her just what that would involve, and she actually rescinded that part of the order because she says, all right, I just had no idea how big this was, and I realized that's impossible, so you don't have to comply with that. But her court order actually said you need to go out and go find everybody who's got a copy of this and get it back from them.
Right? And this kind of thing is changing slowly.
That guy in the corner.
Good, I can't feel my arms anymore. By the way, thank you for pointing out that petitions are crap. But those of us that have, lived the digital lifestyle for years and years and have been banned from residential internet for simply using too much bandwidth for months and months at a time, those of us on business class, how close are they watching us? And really, are they only looking at residential people for this, or are they looking really everywhere?
Are you doing bad things?
Only to small animals.
Then they're probably not watching you. There's simply too much for them to monitor actively. Can they monitor you? Absolutely. Is your stuff being recorded? Probably at some level, like, again, bandwidth usage, what you're doing, that sort of thing. Do they care about it? No.
It's a matter of running the math. I mean, you think about, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you pull the numbers of the internet traffic in a day, in a week, and the numbers are obscene. The hardest problem of intelligence is not the analysis, it's the figuring out what to store. I mean, think of it, even something like the NSA is drinking from a fire hose, and the fire hose is coming out. And they get something, they got to figure out really fast whether they save it or let it go. And they don't got any time because there's more stuff coming. And that right now, I think, is the limiting problem. And that's why you're seeing a lot of work being done in real-time analytics. Because the more they can extract the metadata from the data in real time, the more data they can let go of, so they can concentrate on the stuff they want. That being said, it's a very opaque system to us. So really, in your question, the question is who is the they, and how is it working? I think is a lot more storing of relationships than conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more storing of who's saying to who rather than what they said, just because it's so much, and being able to quickly zero in on people of interest. This is why they want to distribute that so much. I mean, internet retention law, forcing the ISPs to save the data, right, saves a lot of storage. Because suddenly it's pushed out on the ISPs.
Yeah, I was going to say, I push at least a terabyte of data every month each way.
Right, but it's video. It's not text. It's not, right. If you can quickly recognize, oh, this is music. Right, which is why you're seeing a lot of research in quickly recognizing steganography, to know when something's hidden in it. Right? It's the data recognition problem that's actually a very hard one.
Have they got real-time steganography now? That it'll detect?
It depends on the steganography, but yeah, you can do some detecting, just because you know what normal looks like.
All right.
Bigger bird?
One. Those two guys, people right there. Her.
Okay, good.
Thanks for holding this panel.
Wait for the mic.
Hi. My question pertains to what you're saying, and I think that there's a couple of different layers of people who are here for different parts of it. We're driving from here to the Democratic National Convention to volunteer with Planned Parenthood. If I get FaceTime with someone, what law has either the most tipping point or is the most dangerous from the perspective of co-opting the freedom that we currently have on the internet?
Damn, I don't think there's just one.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to pick two. If you had to pick two, that's all you get because you have elevator speech.
Right. So this is the problem.
With Biden.
I mean, in a sense, we're playing a giant game of whack-a-mole.
Okay.
Right. So right now there's nothing that specific that I'm worried about. I mean, I'm worried about the UN meeting more than anything else right now. But stuff appears, and then you have to mobilize. I mean, really, the elevator speech is about the value of an open internet. That it actually is real value, not just to the world, but to our society. And the more we can do to preserve that against these special interests that are trying to limit it for these point reasons, mean, that's the kind of debate. It's not, are you for or against copyright, or it's, should we burn the internet to save copyright? And you move the debate that way, and I think we're doing good.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Here's 1 second.
All right, I guess we're going to hold for a second.
Processing.
Recalculating.
He made a very good point there of not discussing the individual bills because they're just too many, but discussing the sort of idea behind them, because you'll cover a lot more ground a lot faster that way. The other problem is that the bills we know about are only a small portion of them. One of the nicest ideas but worst things we have in politics is something called riders, where you can tack pretty much anything onto a bill as an amendment, and those things almost never become public until it's actually gone through somewhere. So the ones that we're hearing about are really the tip of the spear, as it were, but there's a whole slew of things behind them that you may never hear about. So definitely talking about the concept instead of the individual bill will help you cover a lot more ground.
That guy in the red shirt.
I think we should only hear from people who are actually going to the Democratic Convention to work for Planned Parenthood, because that's right. Because that's pretty damn cool.
I've had to use that service. It was not fun.
You've mentioned the legitimate reasons for some of these. For some of these bills. Do you feel that there is a place for an improved version of any of these pieces of legislation, and has anything reasonable been drafted somewhere in Congress yet?
There's the 2012 cybersecurity bill, which was fairly good, but it still had some huge flaws. I mean, fairly good and huge flaws. I don't know if they can coexist, but it was significantly improved from SOPA and PIPA. Can you hear me all right? All right. So I think that failed in the beginning of August. So the next one hopefully will have the improvements. Al Franken, representative, I think, made an amendment which would have been really good and really improved it, but it ended up not passing. So
I think the real problem is the sort of the conflict between the technology and Congress, because it's very good to say, hey, we want to stop terrorism, we want to stop child porn and stuff, but how do you really do it without inspecting packets that are coming through? And as soon as you start doing that, you start inspecting things that have got nothing to do with those things, because you have to clear them. And so you do have a privacy issue there. So there's a definite conflict there between protecting privacy and being able to do the necessary inspection to find out what is bad, and then go after those folk.
I mean, that's the problem with laws in general. Is there something that we ought to be fixing? Yes. There are certainly, I mean, from my perspective, looking again at copyright, being pro-copyright, not pro-copyright troll, let me get that out there right now, but pro-copyright generally, I think there are lots of things out there that are a problem right now that ought to be addressed, that technology makes a problem. Copying is way too easy now. And it makes it a problem that we didn't have before, when if you wanted to copy a painting, you had to go paint the damn thing yourself. So we've got a problem that exists that ought to be fixed. How does it get fixed? Is there a good bill? That's a different question. But the same thing goes for, we all got really afraid of terrorism in 2001, and suddenly we had all kinds of security measures that sounded great in an academic discussion. Oh, we'll all be safer, and yet at the same time we lost millions of freedoms along the way. The things that sound good and the good things we want to do, unfortunately,
Battery died.
Wow. Now you know what a battery sounds like when it dies.
How about that?
Sounds like a capacitor.
Unfortunately, I completely forgot my train of thought now. Unfortunately, there's only so safe we can be and still have freedoms. There's only so much copying we can prevent and still have freedoms. There's only so much that laws can do. Unfortunately, trying to convince a government that it ought to limit its actions swimming uphill.
And one of the biggest problems I see in the pieces so far, the legislation, is that it gives the ISPs the ability to basically monitor everything you do. So they could see, where you bank at, what websites you go to, what you type, and everything. And then the law would, in these bills, would impose an obligation or at least an ability for them to report information that fits these criteria. If it's a cybersecurity threat, well, what is that? Or if it's imminent, a threat of imminent harm or something. So it's very vague laws like that really pose a threat for people's privacy and freedom of speech and everything.
Yeah, and you also go into a problem like NSA examining your packets. If they find something, they'll do something about it. But if they don't care. On the other hand, if you've got someone sitting at a knock who's making $20,000 a year monitoring your activity, you've got a much, much huger scope for not even criminal things, just embarrassing things from you getting out. I mean, if you're sending dirty pictures to your girlfriend or boyfriend and this person comes across it, what's stopping them from making a copy? So it's also simply a scope of who's got access to what information.
Thank you.
The people who have something to hide, doesn't all this become relevant with Tor?
You said irrelevant with Tor?
Yeah.
Well, I think William Benny did a speech at Hope Conference 9, and he proposed several ways where Tor might be able to be cracked if you see where the information is going in and out and you monitor enough nodes. But someone who's technical, maybe Andrew could answer that.
So people know Tor is an anonymity service. And in general, there are always technological solutions to these problems. Right? The bad guys will be able to use technological tools like Tor and others to hide. But these laws really aren't targeted against them. Right? They're targeted against your mother, you, everybody. Regular people will not use the tools, not the tech tools. They're not tech savvy enough. The terrorists will use them, the criminals will use them, the pirates who are professionals will use them. It's the hobbyists who won't. We're just going to use the net. And so while there are always going to be tools, and you'll never make them go away, no matter how much security there is, how much control there is in the platforms. Even the iPhone, which you only put software on here that Apple likes. You can jailbreak your iPhone and undo that. But most people won't. To a first approximation, nobody will. So we can't just say the tools exist, therefore we're okay.
Can I say one thing? Just agree with one point. I don't think if you use stuff like to make yourself anonymous, you're necessarily doing something wrong. I think that there's something inherently valuable in just privacy in general. And so that's...
Yeah, but it's kind of sad that we have to go to that level to stay private.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody went to that level, then it would be...
No.
Indeed.
because then we'd figure out some other way. We'd have to go to some other way.
You're right. That's why I think it's important for all the good guys to use the tools as much as possible. Because because it can't be. It was like back in the 80s when we saw U.S. Drug testing was brought up for government employees, and then Attorney General Edmund Meese said, we're not going to do it, and I'll start. I'm not going to do it. Even though he's about as boring as you can get, and has nothing to hide. He was making a moral stand. It can't be that only the bad guys use privacy tools, and it's certainly not true that if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. That's a ridiculous argument. The more noise we make by using these tools, the better we'll all be.
Hey, Bruce, I got a question for you. With your book on the trusted societies and structures that we have in society, do you think that there's sort of a schism building between trust at the public level and trust in the government level?
Yeah, and a lot's been written about our society and how we're losing trust in institutions, and I think it's a big problem, and it's a lot of cause. It's a complex topic. I don't want to start, but I can hand people a reading list if they want to know some smart thinkers who've written about this.
Okay, time for one last question. So pick a good one.
Guy there, he hasn't had a question yet. Yeah, third row back.
Yes. I like the point about the anonymity tools is that a lot of the bills that are trying to be passed probably would not deal with very many of those simply because it's they wouldn't be the people writing them and trying to develop them wouldn't really have the know-how to come up with systems to deal with that. And so it would only be it'd be like skimming the top level of the criminals that are out there that aren't savvy enough to use the tools themselves. So you'd still have the core of the problem that is never actually being looked at.
Yeah, you also have normalization behavior. I mean, think about China and the Great Firewall of China, which actually is kind of a mediocre piece of technology. It only works marginally well. And this is designed to limit websites people can surf. That really works because everyone's afraid, because they don't know if it's going to work, that public internet cafes people are spied on. Right? It's the change in behavior resulting from the tool more than the technical sophistication of the tool. So these tools don't exist in isolation. They exist in a social ecosystem. And how that interaction is often a bigger effect than just the technology.
But that raises a good point. I mean, the problem with these laws, and the reason that they're such a big problem, is not even the unintended consequences to the uninfringing behavior. It's the fact that they won't actually capture any of the things they're trying to solve. They're completely inadequate to resolve the issue that sounds like the good thing: stopping child porn, stopping terrorism, stopping piracy. All of those things sound like great ideas. These bills won't do it, but they'll screw up all of you who aren't actually doing anything improper. So that's the biggest issue in my mind with the laws that they're trying to put out, is they won't even get the good effect. You'll just get the bad side effects. Now we're all staring at Blair.
How many closing comments?
Zippers everywhere.
That was a good closer.
There you go. All right.
Thanks. Thank you for coming.